Hey, what's up, agency owners, business owners? Really good to be hanging out with you for another Cloudways Prepathon. We're jamming today as part of the Cyber Monday Black Friday extravaganza that we have going on all week. And our goal, our vision for each of you is to make Black Friday and Cyber Monday truly magical for your clients, for your stores, for the offers, for the deals that you have coming out. And so Cloudways has organized this entire week of sessions, expert panels, Twitter chats. We've been having a lot of fun all week. We still have a few more sessions in store for you tomorrow, but I want to welcome you to this expert panel. We're going to be talking today about moving forward with WooCommerce and how store owners can adapt and should adapt in the post-COVID world. And I have some pretty amazing guests with us today. So we've got a good crew of agency owners, of web professionals that are going to be sharing their expertise on today's session. So we're going to have a chance to quickly introduce everybody on the panel. Directly to my, I guess that's my left, but maybe it's you guys will see him on the right. We got Deyan Georgiev, and Deyan is co-founder and CEO of NitroPack, the site speed optimization service that powers more than 100,000 websites, helping them to achieve fantastic real-world optimization results. Deyan, good to have you with us, man.
Hey, Brent, thanks.
For our listeners, man, where are you connecting from today?
Today, I'm connecting with you guys from Sofia. Our office is here in Sofia, Bulgaria.
Very cool, man. Well, welcome from Sofia. Directly below me is Sean Conklin from Coded Commerce. Sean is an MBA and founder of his business based in Los Angeles. He's been a full-stack PHP web developer since 2002. He specializes in WordPress powered sites since 2009 and primarily WooCommerce. So we're going to be talking about WooCommerce today. And I know you're in the trenches with business owners and agencies and stores every single day inside of WooCommerce. So Sean, man, good to have you on our program today.
Thank you, Brent. Good to be here.
And you're connecting today from Los Angeles, I assume, from my introduction of you?
You got it.
Awesome, man. Well, welcome. Today we're going to be talking about some awesome topics today. And last but not least, kind of catty corner to me in the bottom right is a good friend of mine, Ronik Patel of Unlimited WP. After building his agency in both Boston and Ahmedabad, India, he wanted to find a way to help other agencies. So he took his team of highly qualified web developers and web designers and launched Unlimited WP, a white label WordPress partner for growing agencies. And since launching, Ronik and I were talking about this the other day, he's completed his team, not him, but his team has completed over 10,000 WordPress tasks and projects over about the last year, which is pretty incredible. They literally have like a dashboard and they can see how many tasks they're completing for agencies out there. So I'm really interested to get Ronik's insights today because he's literally watching websites get built and tasks get done on lots of e-commerce stores every single day. Ronik, man, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me, Brent.
And where are you joining us from today, Ronik?
Well, I typically live in Boston, but I'm at our India office in Ahmedabad right now.
Very nice, man. Well, welcome again to the program, and thanks for staying up late and hanging out with us today.
Yeah, this is fun with some WordPress pros. Yeah, I wouldn't miss this.
Yeah. And before we get into our questions today, if you're hanging out with us on today's stream and you have a question for one of our amazing panelists, please throw that in the comments below. I'll be monitoring that as we go through today's session. So if you have a question, please throw it in there and we'll get that rolling in our conversation today. So what I'd love to do though is get into our first question. You guys ready for this one? Maybe they're thinking about it. You guys are being a little shy today. All right, we're gonna jump in. So we're gonna start all in on what's going on in the world today, right? So the pandemic, we all know, forced a lot of physical stores to go online. People that ran brick and mortar, mom and pop shops, or even some larger businesses that had resisted going online. So now that things are back to, and I put normal in quotes, they're back to normal-ish. Should store owners go back to focusing on their brick and mortar, or should they continue online? I'd love to get maybe Sean, you're a WooCommerce focused person with lots of e-commerce stores. What's your opinion on this one?
Yeah, I mean, I think we are entering more of a hybrid phase now, which we were in pre-pandemic anyway. You know, I co-organized some WordPress meetups and things like that, and you know, we had transitioned from in-person to online, and then now it's really a mixture of both. So I think you have to serve both to be as effective as possible. Now, interestingly, in a recent presentation, I had heard that card present rates are better than card not present. So you can, if you are able to take payments in person, there is a benefit to that. So, monetarily. So either way, I mean, but online is extremely important to be in context where everybody is, any time of day. Being able to offer as much automation as possible, very useful for businesses to have both, the benefits of both.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Sean, for that. I don't know if there's anything you can do to turn up your mic volume a smidge, man, or I think I got a note that having a hard time hearing you. I want to go next to Deyan. So what do you think on this one? I mean, obviously, we're all web pros talking about whether people should focus on their websites. We probably have pretty clear views on that, but what's your thought on, is there a new normal kind of post-COVID for online stores?
Well, I'm obviously biased towards websites and towards going online, but in all fairness, I think there's a case here to be made that you should ask yourself, how do I stay competitive? And what really makes sense for my personal business? Because chances are, if your competitors manage to be both online and offline, and for example, you just want to go offline, well, you may be losing out on this. So I really ask myself, hey, I want to reassess how things are going right now. What is my competitors? What are my competitors doing, and what makes sense for my business going forward? I think there's a lot of growth to be had online. My personal bet would be you should be present online.
And I'm kind of curious, you guys are all doing a lot of work in the e-commerce space. Are you seeing, I mean, there was a huge burst, influx, I assume, of people building, new sites or trying to get into e-commerce 18 months ago. Are we still seeing a large amount of tasks and new sites coming online?
I'd say yes. We're still seeing a lot more. We're still seeing a lot of people who, like 18 months ago, just went out there, bought a theme, put a WooCommerce store up, and now they're coming back and saying, okay, let's make it proper, right? Like the most of the stores we are seeing, they didn't upload all their products because it's one thing to have your store ready, but there's a lot of manual work involved with preparing your CSV file, product images. A lot of the stores don't have those images, right? So now I think what, at least for us, what we are seeing is like making those stores better now. Right. And just to answer, I agree with Sean and Deyan, it's going to be hybrid, but there's like a lot more opportunities out there now. Like I remember a couple of years ago, if you're looking for extension to do delivery on your WooCommerce stores, there weren't that many options. I think there were like one or two, but now there are so many more extensions available to do like in-store pickup. So I think the store owners can use their physical presence to boost their online sales, and vice versa. They can use their online presence to boost the sales at their stores.
That's cool. So just even looking at the extensions that are available now, people had to innovate, they had to figure it out. Are there any extensions for WooCommerce that are more around the delivery business model? Because I know COVID forced a lot of businesses like restaurants and takeout businesses. I mean, are they still able to use like an in-store pickup type of thing, or can we use online ordering type plugins within WooCommerce right now?
There weren't that many, but now there are, like order now and pick up at store type of ones where it's sort of an hybrid where you're still going to the store to pick it up. There's one on like Woo themes now. So there's like official ones. There are others that are not officials on like Envato, but there are even official ones that you could use now.
I'm curious how agencies play a role in this. I mean, Do you think there are still businesses that are not fully convinced that they should be launching an online store right now? Maybe we'll go back to Sean on that one.
I mean, in my world, no, everybody is already sold on having an online store. So get inquiries from a variety of people. There's what I sort of call the dreamers, those who are trying to get into it, and then there's those who already have an online e-commerce presence and they're looking to expand it, customize it, migrate it, get support for it, stuff like that. So I mostly work with the latter, just because they're more ready for a developer to get in. Whereas at the earlier stages, people are more in DIY mode, and it's wonderful that this technology is friendly to that. It's great that people could get in and get started. Mixed levels of success there, obviously, in the earlier phases. So,
What do we see as like one of the biggest challenges post-COVID? I mean, a lot of people probably launched e-commerce stores thinking, oh man, I got to pivot, I got to whatever. Not every business made it through COVID. If I'm a business and maybe my store didn't explode, right? It didn't totally take off. I mean, what are some of the challenges if I'm going to continue e-commerce that I might be thinking about that I need to overcome, like soon if I'm going to continue this e-commerce focus of my business?
Yeah, if, we're continuing with me here. Or is that open to everybody?
Yeah, it's open to everyone, but you got the floor, Sean, so we'll go with you.
Yeah, it depends so much on the business. So I'm trying to think of an example in this case. So I'm racking my brain on the best example here. Anything come to mind that you wanted to just, a type of business and what they've experienced?
Yeah, so Ronik brought up obviously like number of products, getting products online, actually marketing our stores, standing out. I mean, those are some of the types of challenges I imagine that a small business owner who was probably strapped for people and time during the COVID crisis, right? So what are some of those things that maybe are still prevalent challenges for these store owners?
Yeah, so just to put out an example, if your products or your marketing materials are not liked by any of your channels, ads get disapproved. For example, if you're doing paid ads, payment gateways can have issues with things. I had one client where there was another site she was working on, and she accidentally put a CBD order through, and it just shut her PayPal down instantly for her main brand. She had PayPal on. Fortunately, there was another gateway because, you want to have your backups, right? You want to think about multiple suppliers, multiple payment gateways. The main benefit of having this e-commerce core in your business with open source Woo is that you have all those freedoms, and you can have multi vendors, and you really should, because you never know what's going to fail. It can happen suddenly.
Deyan, I'm curious from you. You've got your plugin is installed on 100,000 sites. You got you've got some of that data. You can kind of see how people are using this. Now I realize you may or may not talk about all the types of insights that you all are able to pull from seeing this type of scale. But I mean, what are you seeing as kind of some of the important insights from the volume of e-commerce sites and businesses that you guys are supporting?
Well, there's several things, but most importantly, they would revolve around real user experience and how end users perceive and can use the website. It seems like quite a few people who came online during the pandemic, or that growth that happened during the pandemic, led with it many websites that were more or less very heavy, loads of heavy images, loads of JavaScript, loads of different things being put on those websites. And it hasn't always been evident what the benefit of all of those extra things put on the website is. So if I have to say what was the biggest sort of issue that we see people struggling with, that would be user experience and how the website actually works in the real world. Because one thing that we see relatively often is that developers and site owners tend to test their website on high-end devices, which is good and all, but there's a lot of benefit to be had if you properly see how your website works, not necessarily on the newest iPhone, but maybe on a mid-range device, to really make sure that what you're doing and what you're investing in works for as many people as possible.
I love that, highlighting that, right? I mean, how many of us through the pandemic turn to our favorite companion, right? Our phone or our tablet kind of devices. And I also think a lot of people that were maybe laggards into e-commerce as a customer, right? They weren't used to ordering online, all of a sudden started ordering online, and they might not have the most current devices, right? I'm thinking of like parents and grandparents that maybe have some outdated technology and stuff like that. How can agencies realistically take that stuff into consideration? I mean, what advice do you give them, Dan?
I would say really try to put yourself in the shoes of your customers and your users, and really try and test things out. But try and really imagine, hey, who is using this and what are they trying to achieve? I would really try and focus on the intent. I want to give you one example here, and it might be a little bit anecdotal, but it's something that happened to me last weekend. I wanted to order cupcakes for a family member. It's a super simple task. I wanted to order cupcakes for a family member. And the business, it seems like they recently went online because the website didn't really seem very mature and very sort of well polished. And they made me go through so many hoops just to order some cupcakes. They made me want to type so many things. They made me type so many things, and I didn't want to do it. At the end of the sort of the user journey, I gave up. I don't want to do it. I want to order a couple of cupcakes. So I think this may be a little bit, it may sound a little bit simplistic, but so often do I see websites that haven't really been thought through, that people haven't really taken the time to go ahead and test them and really make sure that whoever is going to use that website can actually understand it and can actually use it. Guilty as charged. I've done that in the past as well, where we like to talk about terminology. We like to talk about speed and different terms around that. But it really should be tailored to how a person, my target customer, can understand this and what is their intent and how can I help them satisfy their intent or get to value as quickly as possible.
Yeah, that's awesome. What so I'm curious because you made me start thinking about this of, we're ordering cupcakes online. I know if I was ordering the cupcakes on, let's say, Amazon, right, it'd be like one-click type of ordering. What are the best practices in terms of setting up WooCommerce in a way for fast and easy checkout? I mean, I know there's like a handful of different ways, right, where how people can kind of set this up. But in y'all's opinion, like, what's the best way to make a frictionless order process on WooCommerce? And I know we'll go maybe to Ronik next. I know you guys have a lot of sites that you're supporting on WooCommerce. I don't know if you have a strong opinion on this, but is there like a method or a feature that you see that just seems to be the best way of implementing checkout on WooCommerce?
There's one that we recently started doing about a year ago, and that was just out of pure pain of, when people talk about responsive websites, it's not just that it loads on the mobile and you can see everything, but the actual user experience behind that. So I'll give you a couple of examples. Is like on a default WooCommerce, when you're working with it, the add to cart or your checkout button, when you are on your phone, and if the product has a lot of information, you're just scrolling, reading that information. Now you go out there and find that button, right? Like, where's the add to cart now? So you go up there and you try to find it. What you see on the mobile apps that you use, like, Amazon or any other ones, they're always sticky on the bottom, right? It's as simple as that. Like, making those add to cart sticky at the bottom will help us so much. Another thing is the default WooCommerce. Let's say you add a product to your cart. Now, if you click on your cart icon, you'll go to a cart page, which is a separate page. Now you're there and you're like, no, I want to change a product. Now you go back to your, go to products and find that product again, or hit that back button. What we started doing recently is, and there's a plugin out there, or you can do it custom as well, is, just like the mobile apps, where you can have that cart open like right to left, just sort of a swipe screen. You see it, what's on your cart, you just cancel that, you're still on that page, and you can continue doing your shopping, right? So like those type of small adjustment to what default WooCommerce has, I think that can increase that user experience greatly.
That's awesome. So, and again, I'm imagining, right, shopping on most of the major, like either major brands or, the Amazon, right? I was gonna say 800-pound gorilla. I think they're like a 800-ton gorilla or something. But they put so much science and data and study behind those really, really simple things. And I love it. So bringing some of those concepts of the sticky add to cart button, make sure that's a part of your store. Also, maybe not having somebody leave their product that they're looking at in order to look at the cart on mobile. Sean, do you have anything to add to things that people should look at from the default WooCommerce setup?
Yeah, so first of all, every business is unique. It has its own audience, its own, products and services, its own flavor, right? And so there is no like out of the box, one-stop shop solution, although there's a lot of research that will talk about UX and, provide a lot of insights. There's KPIs out there like your Google page speed score, your response time, all kinds of things like that. Lots of ways to measure. If you do focus groups, it's really cool to watch people try and use your site and see how much trouble they actually have with it. But I would say that the biggest thing to keep in mind is the experimentation. If you're trying a feature, if you're trying a design change, look at it as an A/B test. I don't want to come into a website and see 50 plugins running. I know that site is not going to be optimal with any KPI. It's just overbuilt, okay? With experiments, you want to, they have a life cycle, a start and a finish, right? And an A/B test, you got A running, you add B in, you figure out which one wins, that becomes the new A, and you come up with a new B. You don't just add C and D and E and F, So you got to just keep sharpening things, and that means everything you add, you're removing something. It's like a dance. And then your site will run well, and your user experience, because you'll be focused on what counts at that point instead of just, building.
You mentioned coming into a site and having 50 plugins. I'm just curious.
Oh,
that's been a situation?
Oh, absolutely. 50, 60, even 70. I had 2 new clients come in that each had 70 plugins, and they came during the same month. And I was just like, if I have any hair left at this point, it's going to be gone by the end of this month.
And Deyan, I'm sure you all have had to deal with poorly built sites and trying to optimize, getting things to load fast and things like that. I mean, what are you seeing in terms of things that people can take into consideration on their WooCommerce site, either from a performance standpoint or just from an e-commerce user experience standpoint?
There's 2 main things that come to mind. And the first one, and although it's not always useful to make generalizations, but something, I think it was a quote that I heard from Shopify, I think a week back or so, that on average, they saw that if you improve the load time of the first page that the user sees by 10%, they saw in their data a 7% increase in conversion. The main point here being, in terms of user experience, the first page is super critical. I mean, this could obviously be a different page for every business or for different cases, but I would really focus on that first one to make sure that the first interaction with the user is as optimal as possible. And then a second point would be, and that is very related to what Sean talked about a couple of minutes back. Usually there is, it is often a case that there's quite a few things going on a website, and it's not clear how much of a benefit there is to having many plugins there. So I would be super mindful of, hey, do I really need this? Is this really adding value? The method that Sean described to sort of eliminating things is, I think, great. To use the dance metaphor, I think is a very good one. And this is something that store owners would probably want to work on with their developers. But one of the things that could be done is, and this is something that our technical team sort of talked to me about recently, and I think it's a very interesting sort of thing to have in mind. That is, okay, in some situations, you need to have many pieces of technology working. You need to have all those different plugins, but maybe you can arrange things in a way that things don't block each other. as much as possible. So if you have something that we could call intent-based loading, you may end up with many technologies running on the website, but still providing a good experience. An example would be image lazy loading. You load the images under the fold when the user shows intent, when the user, for example, scrolls. So if you could apply this concept in your case, you could, I think, gain a lot, and you could sort of have that extra speed, although there's many things that are going on your website.
I love that phrase of intent-based loading, and just even thinking about what is the user's intent, and even looking at that as a filter for, do we install a plugin, or do we install a feature, or how does our checkout work, making sure that you're thinking about, all right, how is somebody going to actually use this? When are they going to use it? Are they going to be on mobile? Are they going to be on desktop? What kind of purchasing decisions are they going to be making? And I also love that tip of the 10%, improving on the 10% of the first page, and maybe even inviting agencies and their clients to look at their top pages on their site, right? Where are people coming in? What's the first page that people are seeing? And while they might spend a ton of time on the homepage, maybe they have a page that's like ranked really high on search, and it actually is getting a lot more traffic than the homepage. And maybe it's a page that they're not traditionally thinking about optimizing, right? So really think about that first user experience. I want to throw in a question here, guys. This is something that is on my mind, especially when it comes to e-commerce right now. Thinking about, WooCommerce as a platform and the big SaaS that's out there, whether it's Shopify, BigCommerce, and also the marketplaces, Amazon, eBay, right? How is WooCommerce as a platform? How are developers that are building open source and solutions where the client kind of owns their own website, right? They're not having to pay into a Shopify. They're not having to pay into Amazon or deal with their kind of stuff, right? How do you think WooCommerce right now is differentiating and competing against these big platforms? If I'm a WordPress agency out there and my client's trying to make a decision, do I go WooCommerce or do I go to one of these other platforms? What are some things that you think that they should be thinking about? Maybe we'll start with you on that one, Ronik. I don't know if you've got opinions on this one.
Like, one thing I would say is, like, we when it comes to e-commerce, we talked about store and it's always products, right? But I think the use of WooCommerce, especially for us, we would be, we use it more so for other purposes than to sell products, right? There's like so much more you could do with WooCommerce than to sell products, right? Subscriptions, memberships. We had a gym that, now they're bringing their entire membership, collecting fees online, learning courses. It's another big area that's there, meal programs, you name it, right? Like there's so many other things that you could do with WooCommerce because of the extensions, the availability, the community. There's just so much available there around WooCommerce. Where, when it comes to Shopify, we just think about like products. Okay, if I want to sell products, I may go to Shopify, but there's so many other use cases where WooCommerce is really excelling. I don't know if it's intended or not, but like we're definitely seeing a lot more of that. As you said, like, paying no fees, owning your code, owning your data. That's also a big thing. Customizations, right? Like if let's say you're some club and you like to collect your membership dues, if there's nothing out there that can meet your needs, it's still possible to customize it. Not that it's not possible to customize on other platform, but just the community that's out there for WooCommerce, you'd be able to find enough resources to actually implement that. So I would say WooCommerce is great because it's not only to sell products. There's a lot more that you could do on WooCommerce.
The word customization was what kind of came up for me as you were talking. I wrote it down. I was like, being able to create a very bespoke and custom experience based on different business models and having that flexibility. And I love just hearing what you said about subscriptions and membership and courses and meal programs. I know a lot of restaurants in COVID started shifting some of their resources to kind of meal prep, meal delivery, even restaurant subscriptions, things like that. Sean, what are some of the customizations that you've seen store owners make that have kind of made you go, or they've asked for, right? Whether you've been able to achieve it or not, right? What are some of the customizations that you've seen people push WooCommerce forward?
It's all over the place. By the way, if you go to my site and you click code snippets, I have tons of examples of this. So it's kind of fun to browse the library, so to speak. And those are free open source. Anybody can play around with them on a dev site, for example. But you've got let's say a client wants to customize the design of something, right? The first thing you do is you look at their theme and the content, and is this just a regular content matter, right? Not necessarily code, right? You get into the code when you need to. Now, code-wise, if they want to solve it themselves, they might go plugin shopping, but us developers, we tend to think more, oh, can we just write a function for this? Typically what would go in your functions.php file, or a code snippet for that matter, just a paragraph of code, if you will. It's a lot cleaner than a plugin that's maybe 100 or 1,000 times that size to achieve the same outcome. So that's sort of my approach. Now, as far as what they're actually doing, oh wow, it is a lot of customizations, because this is custom software that, like you say, you own, that you can fully customize, that you have the freedom to decide who your vendors are going to be, right? So with that open book, it's all about the business. So I would say one of the more common themes I'm getting is integrations. Like we're expanding our sales tax, right? We're expanding zones, and we need a tax service, shipping and fulfillment, custom rules around shipping. I program quite a bit, where these product categories we want to do a special on that, so it's this qualifies for the free shipping method, other product categories don't. Or shipping calculators and things, where you're like having a banner, free shipping, just you need to add $7 more, add to your cart and you'll get free shipping.
Yeah.
So it's little stuff. It really is little, but it's just specific to what's going to work for that business at that time.
Yeah, and that's kind of when I think about being able to make those small changes. Sometimes when we've been even coding custom stuff, like you kind of like, why do they really need this, right? But I think as a business owner, you come up with these ideas, whether it's a vision or a dream or an idea of how you want something to work, and being able to actually achieve that, or maybe even just test it. Kind of going back to your A/B testing. Sometimes as entrepreneurs, we have ideas that end up not being very good, right? We're like, oh, if we had a button that did this, right? If we had an easy button for our website, or if we had a sound effect when they, it's like sometimes you come up with an idea and it's not super, it doesn't actually work, right? And you mentioned some kind of more business logistics stuff, shipping, sales tax. And I'll kind of open this up to the group. I mean, have we seen an innovation or some kind of extension using WooCommerce that maybe kind of made your ears perk up and go, oh, that's kind of different, that's unique?
I think the integration, that's probably the biggest. Like the stores that have lots of products and they have a physical location that uses let's say some POS system, the inventory management becomes a nightmare, right? If you had to manually do that. So there's been a lot of requests to connect with my POS, and that isn't a simple task to do that. So I'm seeing there are those POS companies also realize that this is becoming a need. So those POS are coming up with the extensions, but there are a lot that I would say majority of them don't have those extensions to connect, and inventory is like number one thing. If you are on e-commerce, that has to connect with your physical store. So that's been pretty interesting and challenging to see lately.
I've got a question from one of our viewers today. Ak Ash asks, what are the maximum products you have seen on a WooCommerce site? So I'm curious if you all have a number on this one. Maybe we'll start. Dan, I don't know how close you are in actually seeing, being able to see how many products people have in their WooCommerce store. Do you have a number on this one?
I do have one number, but don't quote me on this because it was some time back. I think it was 50K.
50,000. All right. So you got 50,000. Ronik, what's the max you've seen?
We have one site that we still support. I think it's in between 5 to 10K, nowhere near 50K.
5 to 10,000 products on the site. And Sean, do you have a number that is beyond 50K?
Yeah, if we're counting variations, I have one that's well, it's not beyond that; it's 35K. But it really does depend on variation, because a variation is a child product. So to me, that counts as a product count. So it depends on parent versus child.
What are some of the things that happen? I mean, in terms of, I imagine as a business owner, I mean, a lot of that's probably being managed externally, whether it's a CSV file or some kind of spreadsheet or even database that's generating that and linking that up to WooCommerce. What are some of the ways that people manage sites and inventory that have that many products and variations?
From the personal experience, we have faced a lot of challenges. I wouldn't lie. There's been a lot of timeouts when you upload files those big. Depending on the site, the server setup, the hosting, everything keeping in mind, you'd come up with a number that, okay, like this site, you could upload 1,000 product at a time. And then you just have to devise that and work that with your client. And, if they want to do an update on a, let's say, site with the 3,000 products, it's going to be 3 separate CSV that you would upload one at a time, because if you try to do it all together, you'll just get a timeout. So there's definitely some limitations we have faced around that. Outside of that, like uploading the products, it's like on the back end when you're looking at all the products, right? And if you're making some search, I think that's a bit cumbersome in WooCommerce, as you don't have all the filters. You may have like people from different departments go in to manage their own products, right? And they would probably want to see, I only want to see products that are for my department, right? And like those type of things are not there in WooCommerce. So definitely those are the things either you customize or you learn to operate those type of stores.
Sean, anything else besides timeouts and just managing that many products in terms of uploading them and dealing with that?
Yeah, so there's a variety of plugins that can give you more of an interface into that. I would look at the official store first, WooCommerce.com. Those are a bit more vetted, but there's all kinds of things out there for managing products. I've run database queries. That's the fastest thing to do, is to develop a nice SQL command that you can execute that'll update them very quickly. But yeah, spreadsheet management, think of it as category by category. You don't want to think of your entire catalog all at once. You want to work in slices. So when you break it down, a spreadsheet might suffice. I have a couple clients that instead of using like the Google product feed, they do that in manual spreadsheet. So other clients do use the actual product feeds, for Facebook and Google, but there can be advantages to doing it manually if you're trying to just give a very curated, you're paying for those ads, right? Google Shopping isn't free. So, maybe they want to offer a more curated experience without having to go and edit every single product and fill out the metadata for it in there. So it's whatever works for you, whatever works best for you. And again, that goes to the customization that we can do with this software.
All right, guys, we're gonna think a little bit bigger with what's coming next for the web and also for store owners. When I'm thinking about my own career as an agency owner, search was one of the biggest revolutions. It kind of kicked off people wanting to get on the web, all that traffic, the eyeballs. Then people got really hot around mobile, right? Responsive web design. Random, small business owners were Googling, like, what's responsive web design? What is this thing, right? How do I make my sites work for mobile? SSL became a huge thing, securing the web, securing traffic. The last couple of years, web vitals, performance, and speed have been fundamental. And we've already had a few sessions during the Prepathon that were dedicated 100% to performance and speed. So maybe there's some nuances that are still going on in terms of cutting edge, like frontier around performance and speed. But I'm curious, like, what are some predictions that we have around what is the next trend? What are some of the options, the things that agency owners and store owners can start to think about, whether it's 2022 or 2023, what are some of the things that we're seeing people move towards? And maybe we'll start, Deyan, with you on this one. What do you guys think is the next thing beyond speed and performance?
Would love to. Let me do maybe a bridge between the sort of big things coming out next year and the years to come, and what we recently have found out is coming for sure, because maybe that's going to be useful to many store owners who are not aware of this. What is important to know with the rollout of the Core Web Vitals, one key takeaway: all that matters is field data. All that matters is how your site is performing in the real world. So that's the most important thing I would be focusing on when I'm looking at my website. And Google recently announced that in February 2022, there's a planned rollout of the page experience update for desktop to include that as a ranking factor as well. So February 2022, around that time, is probably going to be a very important update. And then there's two more metrics that Google recently announced in their Chrome Dev Summit event. These are still in the early days, so there are indications in the direction of what the teams behind the Core Web Vitals metrics are thinking about. But the two main areas that they're looking at, one of them is smoothness. How smooth is your website when a user is scrolling and consuming content? And the other one is overall responsiveness. So that will be when you interact with your website, how quick is it to interact with? How, in essence, easy it is to interact with? And I'm personally super excited about that update because it coincides with the several projects that we're already working on internally. So in the near term, in looking at Core Web Vitals, looking at adding to speed, we'll be looking at smoothness, responsiveness, and more weight to desktop.
So, and I want to almost open that up to the group to kind of talk a little bit more about, because I think that's such not a shift, but it's an evolution of this speed and performance. It's not just now, like, I feel like how fast the page loads is kind of this like brute force metric of seeing how fast the server and the performance is and things like that. But when you get into like smoothness, I mean, that's a little bit more nuanced. So what are things in terms of how to develop a page, or elements that might have animations or moving or video or motion, or just, button effects? I mean, how do we, as developers and web pros, how do we actually start to think about smoothness and start to get ahead of that curve when we're building sites or optimizing sites?
I think the AMP that Google's been, pitching AMP for quite some time, though it's not completely enforced. With those accelerated mobile pages, essentially, if you want to get your site AMP, don't use JavaScript, right? Like, if your page doesn't have as much JavaScript, things are not moving, then you qualify. But if you use an extensions or page builders and plugins, like, there's no way that your site is going to be AMP, right? So for that smoothness, just getting back to the simple HTML, CSS, do what you can do with the CSS without using excessive JavaScripts. I'm just guessing that might be the clue that Google is trying to still force towards that AMP. And your page has to use less and less of a JavaScript, so that experience is more smoother. Just reading the content, just focus on the content, and not much on the effects around it.
It's almost like I feel like as time has moved on, I mean, obviously user interfaces have become, much better looking than they were, say, 1999. But with headless CMSs and getting JavaScript off pages, I almost feel like there's this desire to get back to just like really clean pages that don't have a lot of whether it's machine generated code or animation code or lots and lots of plugins. I mean, I get the essence that people are trying to move towards a more cleaner, page underneath what we've added to it over the years.
You really have to. By the way, something I'll mention about Core Vitals, and sorry, the dog was whining. I had to go grab her.
Do we need to introduce a fifth character to our show today, Sean? Who do we got with us?
This is Mimi.
All right. How does Mimi feel about speed and performance optimization?
Well, she's 13, so she's slowed down a bit. But I'll say about Core Vitals, I have come across sites where they actually score really good on it, and it's a caching plugin that's really optimizing things. And unfortunately, that's a false reality. The actual user experience is going to be different when you're logged in, when you add to cart, when you're actually doing things on the site. You know, the raw power of the site is the dynamic nature. You know, when you have a cart filled, you know, the caching plugins create a false score. So I could find a site that's getting like an 80% on Google PageSpeed Mobile, and the response time is like 4 seconds. And I'm like, well, that's a horrible response time. It should be under a second, you know, well under a second. And how do you know? You just you put in the website and you put something at the end of it, like a query string, you know, mysite.com whatever, right? And then you're going to see the real performance at that point. So Core Web Vitals is very important to understand the synthetic nature, the processing of the CSS and the JavaScript, and how everything's working together, if it's shifting things around, how long is the page actually painted versus, you know, the end load time of it. There's a lot of really valuable data there, but the score doesn't mean much if you're using you know, false, if you're caching in a way that covers up for underlying problems.
Sean, I think that's a great point. Brent, do you mind if I expand on that? Because I think it's a very important point. Mm-hmm. And Sean is really, really right here. You need to make sure in an ideal world that your caching strategy for e-commerce is suited for that. Yeah, ideally, you want your caching layer to be context aware of items in cart, logged in users. So ideally, you want to treat personalized content, which is often the case in e-commerce, different than, say, for a news website. And what I would do in a situation that Sean describes is, first, a very important distinction. When Google talks about scores, they used to prominently show this 0 to 100 score, which is the PSI score. This is not the thing to be looking at. Ideally, you want to be looking at whatever the data that's being taken from the real world, the so-called field data. That is something that you can more prominently see in the recently updated PageSpeed Insights tool that Google does. And I will be looking at things like time to first byte, largest contentful paint, things that have been taken as measurements from the real world that give you a more realistic representation of what your user is actually experiencing. And also, to a previous point that I talked about in the beginning, you want to go ahead and test it and never blindly follow scores. Go ahead, try it out, add a query or a different parameter, as Sean gave an example about, to see how this page really performs. Very important to make a distinction between the synthetic lab tests, that 0 to 100 score, and the field data. The field data is what matters. This is the recordings of how real users actually experienced your website.
Any advice or tools for how to get more of that field data? Because I've heard you say that phrase a couple times, Dan, and I don't know if you or Sean or Ronik have tools that or websites or services that help you collect a more comprehensive view. Because I've totally been there with, you know, it going both ways, where a site feels really fast and then you go do Core Web Vitals and, you know, that specific time it scanned the site, maybe something happened with the server or something else was going on and it scored really bad. And then I've had the opposite happen where everything's looking good and then I pull up the website and it's like, well, this thing's not really working properly. So how can an agency support our store owners by having a tool or a service or a plugin that can get us more of that field data?
A Google Search Console is where Google has it, and there is a plugin called Google Site Kit that will actually bring that into your admin area. It's a free plugin by Google.
One important caveat when you look at PageSpeed Insights and the measurements there is a 28-day collection period. So you do some changes today, it's going to take time until you see those reflected on PageSpeed Insights or Google Search Console as well. Very, very important, because if you don't know this, you could be really sort of in a frustrated place where you make changes and you don't see those reflected. This is a problem. This is something that we are tackling internally to display this data for users. And one more caveat here is your Core Web Vitals assessment, your field data will be displayed in PageSpeed Insights if there was enough of it collected over the previous 28-day period. So unfortunately, as of today, not all websites are going to see data on this.
All right. So I'm going to bring back my question, because I know we've kind of said, okay, the next thing is maybe going deeper on performance, but performance aside, what's next? Are there other trends that we're starting to see people talk about that might be as important as speed and even some of the nuances of speed, of site performance, of smoothness, of actual field data, of the user experience? I mean, beyond sites going fast, are there other trends that we see as being just as important? I mean, I know a lot of people have spent a ton of money optimizing their sites, and that they'll continue doing that. But what's beyond that? I mean, are we starting to hear some murmurs of stuff beyond speed and performance and security?
I am, when it comes to progressive web app technology, which just to kind of sum that up for anybody, think of what a mobile app can do, how it can access your microphone, your camera, your location, your digital wallet, and how that can be integrated. Now, we already have payment gateways that work with Apple Pay and Chrome Pay, so there's already quite a bit of that going on. But for the actual theme, as we get into full site editing with WordPress now too, for the theme to pull some of that data, like are you in night mode in your operating system? Night mode can be something you leave on all the time, or it could be, day versus night can tell websites to preferably go into dark mode if you can. And that's a whole, for anybody who's worked on dark mode, I think it's an up and coming thing. I mean, all our mobile apps have it, our website should have it too, right? But you don't just turn a web page, go from white to black. I mean, all your colors and how they work together have to work together the opposite way too. So to me, that's an up and comer. I'm excited about night mode or dark mode, whatever you want to call it.
And so maybe even just hearing about this, like kind of the merging from the app experience to the web, because I think you do have certain controls like camera, mic, payment cards, those basic theme settings. And I run on dark mode all the time, and it's always interesting when some of the websites that I use regularly and have gotten used to it, whether it's like news sites or Google, when all of a sudden they started going, hey, you know what, we're gonna match your theme setting, and all of a sudden, my Google searches were, black background with white text. It took some getting used to on some of those sites. So seeing that merge between the app world and the web world, and seeing that those lines continuing to blur, I think that's a great thing for businesses to be thinking about, to continue making those experiences more and more personalized to the user. So what else? What are some other things that might be up and coming trends beyond performance, speed, in mobile?
I just wanted to add one more thing on the mobile. Personally, I'm very excited about the PWA and what it can do. And depending on the site, there may be few things that may not be still available if you want to have your PWA launched. Personally, we are just following iOS and their Safari updates to see when they'll support in-app notifications. Like, that's people been waiting that for like 5 years now. But once that happen, I think that the PWA can really compete against the mobile. So that's definitely could be a one trend. But I wanted to bring something else, as what we see is like a data could be a next thing. As you have this e-commerce sites and you're generating a lot of data that needs to go from one system to another system, right? So going back to what I said earlier about their integrations, is it's going to be more and more in demand. As if you have your WooCommerce store, we just had this recently happen. The store is doing fantastic. They're getting so many orders. Now they want that to be connected with QuickBooks, right, to make their accounting easier. Or marketing is a big thing. So having your store connect with whatever the marketing system that they use with, and if they're running discounts, like will the both systems, how would they communicate, how will the tracking work between those systems, like inventory management. As I said earlier, the order management is another big thing. Is when you have so many orders on the system, like WooCommerce, it's a bit clunkier to manage the orders there. A lot of the stores use third-party services like ShipStation, right? You can have your orders port into ShipStations, and you'll do your order management there. So the point is, there's like so many of the systems that need to communicate with each other, because there's lots of data that needs to go from point A to B. Personally, we think there's going to be a lot more demand in that area. Just having your WooCommerce store, or any e-commerce store, to speak with 15 other applications that you use on your business.
So integrations, we've got progressive web apps and applications. I'm gonna take a quick detour, and we're gonna grab one of our community comments from Saad. And I think this is a really timely question and comment around Black Friday and the checkout experience. So talk a little bit about checkout page experience, how to test it so people won't get stuck and page converts as it should. What kind of issues can one encounter when there will be a holiday rush on the checkout? So I'm thinking about lots of people hanging out on the checkout page to capture that Black Friday, Cyber Monday deal, where maybe they're like, do I buy the new this new wardrobe of clothes, and they're waiting, and that ticker for the deal is like counting down, and then everybody with an hour left or 10 minutes left all of a sudden decides to check out. So what are some things that we can do around those holiday rush, concurrent checkouts, concurrent page loads around WooCommerce?
Testing.
Bump up your web hosting plan.
All right, that's a good one for us hanging out at a Cloudways session. So maybe as you're coming in, right, drag that slider up a few notches from the Cloudways back end, right? Make sure that you've got plenty of hosting and server performance. Ronik, you mentioned testing. So how can people test lots and lots of page load, lots and lots of checkout load specifically, right? Where there's that amount of when you are processing a checkout. Now we're involving payment gateways. We're involving actually processing the order. We're involving any communications out to drop shipping or other systems connected to the API, right? There's a lot of stuff that can happen in that moment. What are some things that you do to test those stores?
It's going to be hard. There are a lot of load stress testing applications out there, but they don't work when you need to go from page A to B, make certain actions, then go to page C and do the checkout. So it's going to be hard. Now, depending on the site, you could build using Selenium browser, you could have those test scenarios built and then send 1,000 users to perform the same action. But that's not going to be an easy solution. Like nothing drag and drop. That's going to require a lot of work. So, when I say testing, that's like concurrent user, that's a one thing that's going to be extensive testing. But even just simply testing out your checkout page during this time, making sure that they work as expected. One tip I would give, that we always give it to our clients, especially during the holiday season, is have your chatbot running. That you may not use a chat on a website, but this would be a good time to have that on. So I've personally seen it. If people are experiencing any issues on the checkout, they'll open that chat with you. At least you can, if you're any issues with your site, they can communicate that with you, and you can ensure that you do close on that sale. So that would be a quick tip to add a chatbot just for the period of the holiday season, especially on the Black Friday, Cyber Monday.
So if you do have a deadline, some kind of promo that you've been heavily promoting, make sure that you have that feature, like having a chatbot plugin or service on the website, but probably more importantly, having it staffed, making sure that somebody's actually there to answer those questions. Anything else on checkout? I know, Sean, you had mentioned some stuff on checkout.
Yeah, we had mentioned a sales tax computation and shipping computations, and those are dynamic. So absolutely, they affect the checkout page. Every time you change one of the address fields, it refreshes that, right? Recalculates it. So if you're using services, you got to think about what if the service goes down? What if my plan gets exceeded with that service? So that goes back to something we talked about even earlier yet, about having alternates, having backup services, not having it all in one basket. You don't want one vendor's failure to take down your whole business. You want to have, especially we mentioned payment method, having a secondary payment method live and running, probably a third one in your back pocket that you pull out when you need to, right?
In terms of merchant accounts, that if something happens, if it locks up, you can easily fail over. And you know what? That's happened to me before. We had a big Cyber Monday launch, and we had an issue come up with one of our merchant providers, and we had to switch everybody over to a backup payment. So that definitely happens. Look at those dependencies. We've got time for one more comment here. This is from Saad. Kind of a follow-up question on this is relationship between fast checkout with a faster website load time / hosting. So if we have, can we make the checkout process faster with a faster load time or hosting platform?
Well, yes, you certainly can if what you need is more concurrency, more PHP workers. Absolutely, your server's part of it. One thing we didn't mention was email. When a checkout occurs, an email may go to the admin and go to the customer. That takes time as well. So you might want to turn off the admin emails if you're trying to limit that, or make sure you're connected through a good SMTP service or actual email service in the cloud like SendGrid or Mailgun or something like that. Check your email because that can be a bottleneck.
Any other suggestions for our folks on faster website and load time around the checkout process?
I just want to give a direct answer to the question if there's a relation between a fast checkout and a faster website load. One of my favorite pieces of data from a study that Amazon did a couple of years back, 100 milliseconds of latency increase meant 1% fewer sales. Obviously, Amazon is sort of huge, and this could really be well measured. But the short answer is there is definitely a link between being faster and performing better, and there's definitely a link between being slower and having fewer sales.
All right, we're wrapping up our panel today. I was going to throw this in there. Let's see. I think we have about a minute left before we're going to jump off air. But I want to do a quick trend lightning round. We mentioned that we're going to talk about some trends around e-commerce, WooCommerce, kind of what's happening. I'm curious what each of you kind of thinks around this, or not necessarily thinks, but is it going to be a trend, yes or no? And should businesses be thinking about it? So real quick, we'll just do each of us kind of yes or no on these trends as we go through here. Dan, what do you think, man? Voice search, yes or no?
Nah.
Ronik, voice search?
No.
Sean?
Yes, in the sense that it's a PWA service, yeah.
All right. AI-assisted upselling and cross-selling. So those recommended products that are coming up on a website. Dan, what do you think?
A resounding yes.
Ronik?
Yes, definitely.
Sean?
If it's done well.
All right. He's got the caveat on that. Mobile shopping. I mean, I think this one's pretty good, pretty in there, right? Dan, what do you think?
Yeah, it's a clear yes.
Yeah, Ronik?
Yes.
Sean?
Definitely.
Layup, right? AR and VR. I mean, we've all seen Mr. Zuckerberg's metaverse. Do we think this is going to have an impact in the near future on shopping experiences, AR and VR? What do you think, Dan?
I'm super bullish on AR. I mean, I'm super looking forward to it. VR, I don't know. It seems like it's a little bit too far off in the future, but AR, can't wait for it.
Ronik?
Not immediately, and for certain industries.
And Sean?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. It depends on the industry completely. At this point. At this point,
I think Mark said, "Oh, you'll be in my metaverse and you'll buy a TV from some creator for $1," and I was like, "Okay, maybe. I don't know. We'll see." Right? Let's go with subscriptions. A lot of people love recurring revenue. What do we think? Is this still going to be a thing in the future, Deyan?
You have to be more than ever very careful with subscriptions, and if this is the proper way for you to deliver more value. So if they work well, yeah, definitely, but it's not always a good decision.
Ronik?
think businesses want it, so I think it will happen.
Sean?
Yeah, I mean, it's many businesses completely depend on that approach.
And live chat, bot chat. What do we think, Deyan? More automated in live chat, or let's split this one up. Do we think the future is more automation on chat, or more live, real person chat? What do you think, live or automation?
Live preferably, automation if done well.
Ronik, what do you think, live or bot?
I'll say live more than the bot.
And Sean?
Yeah, it's like an integration with ticketing systems and help desks. But yes, as live as possible for sure. But the bot can usually sort of determine, does this really need to go live, or is this a ticket that is not a live situation?
And social selling, so social marketplaces, Instagram, Facebook, etc. So selling on the social platforms. Dan, what do you think?
Yeah.
Ronik?
I think it'll have its fair share for sure.
Sean?
For sure, yeah. Lots of ways to drive traffic, and you got a mix of free and paid in that. There's some free aspects and some paid aspects.
And the last but not least, product personalization. I want my name on a T-shirt. I want, not just a variation, but a very specific personalization to the actual product itself. Do we think this is going to be more important in the future, Dan?
More important, yes. It doesn't always work, but when it does, it's going to be really a game changer.
Ronik?
I agree with Dan. I think it depends on what products. But for certain products, certain industries like T-shirts, for sure, yes.
And Sean?
The more you could personalize everything, the better. The more competitive you'll be, of course.
It's like all those things I order on Amazon. I just want to have my name written across them. That's really what I'm getting at here today, right? I want all my products to have my name on it. I'm just messing. All right, guys. I think we're coming to the conclusion of this Black Friday, Cyber Monday Cloudways Prepathon event. I just want to thank each of you. I want to thank our audience that was hanging out with us today. Deyan, Sean, Ronik, you were all fantastic today. Thanks so much for hanging out with us today. I appreciate you guys so much.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Brian.
All right, folks, that is it for this session. And if you want more awesome Prepathon content, make sure to check out the Cloudways YouTube channel. All of our replays are going to be hanging out there. We also have a couple more live events coming up tomorrow. We have a Cloudways Customer Experience Jam. We're going to be talking about the Cloudways platform, some of the things that real-world customers are doing with that platform. We also have Dennis Yu, who's going to be dropping some knowledge bombs on us as well. So check out the Cloudways Prepathon page for more info about what's coming up, as well as links to grab all the replays for all of these amazing live events that myself and the other Mavericks and Cloudways team have been hosting all week. So it's been a fantastic Prepathon. We still have more to come, and that is it for this session. Thanks again for hanging out with us today. Until next time, I'm Brent Weaver.